I gotta show you something. This is just something I can't believe. We deal with it all the time. Come on over here, look at this. This thing here is a transmission on a German-made car. This is the way it comes in from the factory. This is a label manufacturer's putting right on this transmission. And you know what? This is 100% BS. It's 100% a bold-faced lie. If this is serviced for the lifetime of this car, the only way that happens is that the lifetime of this car gets shorter and shorter and shorter. It's the only way it can happen. Let me show you what I'm talking about. We've got some examples here. This is some product that came right out of the jug. You see that nice red color? That is right out of the jug, fresh, totally clean transmission fluid right here, and you can see how it behaves. This is the stuff right here, came out of this vehicle. 150,000 kilometers is what's on this car first, transmission service right here. You see this dark black stuff? And I'm not sure if you can see it here, but it's a lot thinner than this stuff. So what I did is I moved it into a couple different containers like this right here, put them side by side, and if we turn them, you'll see how they flow differently, right? You can see that. And you can even see in this one here, I've sort of let it all sort of, but there's a ton of debris in this thing. You can see all these metal particles up along the sides here. You can see it's how it's sort of stratified. We'll set this down and come back to it in a second and show you. But the interesting thing is I was staging for this video last night. So I poured this stuff into these little test tubes. And you can see on the side of this little test tube here how it's completely destroyed the sort of plastic little test tube. So whatever is in here has become so corrosive that if I can't put it in a container and leave it on a shelf overnight, what's it doing in the transmission? It's got to get out of there. I mean, if you take a look at it, this is set for a few seconds. I don't know if you can see that in there if I hold it up to the light. But there's definitely chunks of metal. There's chunks of, I don't know what that is. It looks like sludge, varnish, that kind of stuff. It's all sort of hanging in there. That stuff has to come out. You can't leave it in there. There's not just one person lying to you in some cases. The manufacturer, for sure, for reasons outside of keeping this car in great shape and keeping it going for a long period of time, will give you advice. It'll be in that service manual, in the owner's manual. They'll give you recommendations on how, when, and if, for that matter, to service your transmission fluid. They will lie to you. The mechanic, obviously, you got someone you trust. You're taking your car into somewhere. You're taking it somewhere dependable. Oftentimes, for again, forces outside of just keeping that car on the road will tell you something that is not true. Servicing a car on these things, once they get to a certain mileage, there's all kinds of other considerations that we're going to talk about in this video as well. The third person that's lying to you in all this is going to be you. If you're just hopeful that you don't have to do anything, if you're just sort of hoping somehow it's my car and I drive it in such a way that, you know what, I'm not going to have these breakdowns, I'm not going to have these concerns, therefore I don't have to do it, well, you know what, you're going to have to talk to yourself about that one. So what we're talking about today is this is an automatic transmission, and this is something that the fluid in it is critical, super complicated on the inside of these transmissions, so you really don't want to mess around with it. But with all those little gears there, you got a ring gear, you got all these little planetary gears, everything that's spinning in there's space so that there's multiples of them. So in a certain configuration you get reverse, certain configuration you get first gear, and the mechanical advantage is second, third, fourth, fifth, and so on. These things all wear, and you have to keep the lubrication up on the lubrication quality up on the transmission fluid to prevent them from wearing. We have to keep the thermal qualities of the oil in proper balance so it's distributing the heat. There are all kinds of additives in these packages. There's anti-foam agents, there's detergents like you wouldn't believe in transmission fluid. There's antioxidants, and if you look at what happens in these gear planes, if you look at a gear spinning, in these pressure points at high speed, or if you're towing a truck, there's so much pressure. This oil is actually cavitating. It's vaporizing at these pressure points. It's not turning to water, it's turning to oil vapor. And that vapor has to come out, dissipate through the engine, and be cooled back down, condensed back into liquid. So when it's in that vapor form for a brief period of time, that's when oxidation is going to happen. You can't get away from that. You can't get away from that by sealing a transmission. It's just going to happen with this pressure point thing. The other thing that's going to happen is that there's so much pressure put on this oil, we're going to get into the shear strength of the oil. So the more force we're putting on the oil, we're beginning to take that hydrocarbon chain, hydrogen, carbon, which is the transmission fluid with the additive package, and we're going to start shearing that stuff, and it's going to get shorter and shorter and shorter. And when that happens, the transmission fluid gets thinner and thinner and thinner. And we get to a point where it's no longer oil, by any definition that we can see. It becomes something more like vinegar than it does oil. It's so thin, it can't possibly properly lubricate the components. It can't possibly act as an effective coolant. And it certainly can't act as anything other than a corrosive system. Like, once these things become corrosive, leaving that fluid in the transmission could do more damage than any concern anyone's going to have about changing the oil at 120, 130,000 miles or kilometers and displacing or disrupting something and causing some sort of debris to be lodged through the system. In the case of the mechanic, I want to talk about why would that mechanic, why would that trusted service provider, why would that trusted automotive repair technician mislead you or lie to you? In a lot of cases, it's not a deliberate thing. It's not something that's meant to sort of confuse you or take advantage of anything. It's simply because we're all people. And the last thing we want to do is presenting something to somebody that could cause some expense or cause some concern. And these are incredibly complicated devices. The transmission that's in a car, a modern car, there's more science and technology than this than there was to get around the backside of the moon and get back down to Earth and splash down to the Atlantic. These are seriously complicated devices. And when we get into changing the transmission fluid on something that hasn't been done in the first 50,000 kilometers, the first 50,000 miles rather, at 80,000 kilometers, when the service interval was due for it, we start pushing that out where the additive package is beginning to deteriorate. More sludge, more varnish, more contaminants in terms of metal filings and that kind of stuff. And now we're going to get caught up, so we're going to start pushing that stuff around. And the concern is, where's it going to go? Like if we get some metal filings up in the valve body, which are so intricate little pathways, what happens then? Or what happens if we move some varnish or some debris around? Like we could cause some problems here. And I think what's important here is that, you know, we have to look at what is the oil in, what condition is that in, and what's it doing? That oil has to come out of the transmission. This is not something that's debatable or possible to you know, sort of extend or hope and cross that, you know, let's hope we get another 50,000 kilometers. If we're going to preserve the life of this vehicle, we're going to keep it on the road for years to come, we have to get that transmission fluid out and return some clean, fresh, good working fluid to the system. So the last thing the mechanic's looking to do is to tell you that this is what it's going to cost for us to change the transmission fluid on this car. Have you come back in a couple of days saying, you know what, it's slipping, or it's got a hard shift now, or there's something going on here that wasn't happening before you did this service. So there's more debris in there that didn't come out in the first place. The service might have to be done twice. It's a point of conflict that the average guy, the average mechanic's not going to want to present to a customer. So in a lot of cases, the easy way out is to say nothing. And unfortunately in this industry, I'm sad to say it does happen on occasion. So it's not an outright bold-faced lie, it's just sort of a lack of presentation due to convenience. And unfortunately, it's going to affect the service life of the vehicle. Now let me talk about the manufacturer. So you can see the motives, the goodwill really behind what the technician, the mechanic is presenting to you. But the manufacturer is a different story. These folks have got some agenda that's off the page. It's not what you see with the car on the road and trying to make the car last as long as possible. They're driven by different concerns, and you know there's different criteria here. So if they tell you that you need a transmission service at 50,000 miles, if you're a fleet company and you're looking at buying this car and what's it going to cost me over the first 2 or 3 years or 4 years of owning this vehicle, and I'm going to make a price consideration or a price calculation or cost calculation that do I buy this vehicle or do I buy that vehicle, telling everyone that, you know what, we've serviced the transmission for the lifetime of the vehicle, reduce the cost, which makes the car more economically attractive to someone who's looking at cost. It doesn't keep the car on the road over the long term, but it makes it more attractive for a short-term consideration. The other thing is it affects carbon unit. So we've got oil-based product going in here, which counts against fuel economy. It is a carbon that's going in the car. If it's not going in the car, guess what? CAFE standard goes up, the car shows a better miles per gallon, and it does all kinds of great things in attracting customer interest. Doesn't change the fact that what they're really doing is adding a huge hidden cost to the operation of the vehicle over the standard lifetime of 15 years. There's all kinds of technicians out there. I know we all have our different views, but me personally, I find that, you know, my blood boils a little bit when I hear somebody say, no, it's been too long, you can't flush that. Maybe we should just try a drain and fill or something silly like that. The only way to do this is to flush the entire system, get all the old oil out, fresh, clean oil in every time you do it, and go from there. So the big thing that I'm talking about here today is the quality or the cost, long-term cost of the operation of the vehicle. And I find this to be one of the big things. And I know there's all kinds of service advisors out there, other mechanics, other automotive technicians, transmission specialists, the whole thing. Everyone's got different points of view and all that kind of stuff. But for me, I'm looking at what comes out of these things at the 100,000 kilometer, 100,000 mile intervals. I'm looking at what comes out of these things that they haven't been serviced at the 200,000 mile interval. I'm looking at customers that we're telling them that, look, you need a transmission that exceeds the value of the car at the 200,000 mile point. And it's something to me, it's a no-brainer. You have to get to these things, regardless of whether the manufacturer is saying you should or you shouldn't. Regardless of whether the technician is telling you you should or you shouldn't, you simply have to. And you have to find a way to sort of get to a place, get to a shop that understands these costs, and get your costs under control by servicing these products. The other way to do it, of course, it's certainly possible to do all this stuff on a do-it-yourself basis. This is not stuff that's that hard to do. I'm not going to fit under a car if it's on the ground, if there isn't some way to lift it up, but it is possible to get under there, get the side fill plug out. There's a certain technique that I'm sure you can pick up online, and it is possible to get 2 or 3 quarts out of these things and get 2 or 3 quarts back in, which will do it. It'll make a big difference on the lifetime of the car, but it still has to be done. So you hear my passion on this. This is transmission fluid service stuff. It's not exactly, life or death or anything like that, but it is to me. It's a big cost concern. You can see the difference right here. You can see it swirling around. It's a huge, huge difference, night and day. And telling people that, we can leave this in your car because it'd be too disruptive to move around is just simply not responsible in my view. But anyways, I'm looking at the service points, the experience that everybody's had. There's all kinds of technicians that are out there. Let's hear from everybody. Let's see if we get a discussion going on this. What is the best practice? What is everybody doing? And what's the service life that you can reasonably expect of your car if you do it or you don't do it? Let's hear the conversation. Until then, Steve at the Auto Station.